engage that fight. And we're glad that you're here to participate in this program today. And finally, Our Ancestors' Voices is hosted each week by myself, Ajamu, and my biological and ideological daughter, Shakura. And yes, we are both active organizers within the All African People's Revolutionary Party. So to get us started on our topic today, social media influencers and the counter-insurgency against the African liberation movement, I will turn it over to Shakura.
Thank you, kind sir. Appreciate you. Greetings all. We hope you continue to be as safe and well as you can be. This topic is so critical for now in the time where we are, yes, but also this is why we still continue to push that we want you all to be ideologically, mentally, physically safe, and understanding that you still have a responsibility to enhance whatever it is you feel that you are missing. And hopefully by the end of today's seminar, you probably won't have a PhD in understanding how social media is the best weapon that capitalism can use, but hopefully you'll have a better understanding of how, in fact, this method is pushed out. And maybe that'll give you some tools to try to reflect a little bit differently, try to think of some things differently. Maybe the next time you go to the supermarket, you might strike up a conversation with someone. The next time you go to get your hair cut, or the next time you find yourself at the car wash, whatever that might look like for you, even if you're just taking a walk to the near corner store and you see somebody who you think might be interested in engaging, and why social media may not be the solution to colonized people, poor people, people of color, people who are differently abled, people who are marginalized, to them being free, right? I think we've been conditioned to understand that social media is a tool to help us achieve whatever our life's goals and dreams are, but that couldn't be farther from the truth. So maybe after this 54 minutes that we have left in this seminar, maybe you'll have a better, understanding of just how to go about engaging in those conversations. Because I think the first step for a lot of us, especially those of us who do actively find ourselves within the social media pool, it's going to be understanding that the solution has always been the problem. That's going to be the first step. And that brings me to the first slide here. And so, if we're thinking about how everything is dialectical, because that's a practice and a principle that we identify within the All African People's Revolutionary Party, then we understand that social media is not just a bad thing. And we don't want to articulate that to you all today. What we want to highlight is that there are good and bad outcomes that come from relying on social media, that come from being engaged in social media, that come from not having healthy boundaries with social media, and that come from allowing social media to influence how you think, how you practice your beliefs, how you develop your values and your beliefs. Those are problematic situations that we want to kind of think about. And so, I would highlight that some of the good tips that come from social media is that it helps us reach such a large amount of people who are justice loving people, just like us, that we may not necessarily be able to talk to on a regular basis. We may not even know them yet. We may not have their phone number. We may not know how to reach them. We may not have their address to write them a letter, but maybe they have been organizing in a socialist organization for the same amount of time that we have been. And with social media, we're able to reach those people. We're able to reach people all around the world. It's really quite amazing. I think about how these International African Liberation Day broadcasts have been available at least for the last 4 years since the quarantine started, and how the Pan-African Women's Day events have been internationally live streamed and broadcasted for at least the last 4 years since the quarantine. And just thinking about how, I remember growing up and being able to drive to these events, especially if we were on the West Coast. And so, of course, that was such an amazing experience that I could never, ever replace being in person at African Liberation Day or being in person at Pan-African Women's Day, of course. But for me, because I live in Memphis, we don't have the strongest work study chapter in Memphis yet. We don't even have one in other parts of the state. There are organizers here in work study, but we don't have a functioning work study circle in Memphis, not that I know of, at least not that anybody has communicated to me. So in order to have a work study, that would mean that there would be people here on the ground organizing these in-person events. So my point is, I can't drive to the nearest college campus and go to an ALD. And if I wanted to organize it myself, I could, but that would take a lot of people power. And right now we just don't have it. So being able to log into Zoom or Microsoft Teams or whatever the platform is that our comrades are using currently, that has been so great because we are able to engage with other people who are literally organizing in the same organization as us, which means they have the same beliefs, the same principles as us, and it gives us a chance to engage with them. And I don't know when else we would have that opportunity to do so. I'm talking to you about Zoom meetings that I've been on, ALD and also PAW events, African Liberation Day and Pan-African Women's Day. But I'm also talking about just regular work study meetings. I'm talking about administrative meetings because that's the committee I'm involved with. And when you join these Zoom calls, whether it's an admin meeting, whether it's for ALD or whatever, you have people that will join that will be in Germany currently while you are in the location you're in. They're calling in from Germany, they're coming in from Canada, and they're tuning in from Ghana, they're tuning in from Burkina Faso. We have translators that we literally need to have consistent payments with because we have comrades who are on the same call with folks that speak English and with folks that speak Portuguese. And so having those translators to literally be able to translate in real time is really critical because of the devastation that colonization has done to our people. We have folks from all over. We could have folks on one call from Germany, Canada, Ghana, Azania, and Ohio on the same meeting. And that's because of social media. And so these are amazing things. It's amazing that we can record these events because everybody can't join the live stream at the time it's being broadcasted. But there are several people who tune into our ancestors' voices after Sunday when it has aired officially and lively, and they tune in the work week. And they have said to us, we listen to this while we're at the slave because we need some motivation to deal with capitalism. And so what better way to resist capitalism than to listen to our ancestors' voices at my place where I'm supposed to be producing for somebody else's dime and for somebody else and exploiting myself for somebody else? What better way to do that? And so I know that there's people who are going to watch this seminar sometime next week. They're not even here right now, and that's okay. And so I also think about how we can think about how some of the bad pieces of social media, though, is that it's so much easier for capitalism to push what the products are that it wants you to sell. That's the first piece, and I think that's really important. So you think about all the ads that you see, and I guarantee you, we learned from Kwame Ture, formerly known as Stokely Carmichael, that a lot of the times you think what you're thinking because you think you're thinking it. And I know I'm not paraphrasing this well, but he was saying you think you're thinking of something because you think you thought of it. But in actuality, it was influenced to you. The message was sent to you by somebody else, and they manipulated the message to make you think that you initiated the thought. When in actuality, you did no such thing. Because you can see that play out when you see commercials for food. You may not even be thinking about the fact that you are not hungry, but you see this commercial and then you start thinking about getting something delivered via Uber Eats because you see the commercial for the people. You see the Subway commercial and you think about Steph Curry and then you think, man, I could really use a sandwich right now. And you think about all these different things. And so it's no different with commercials from Temu and all these other commercials that we see on these ads when we're watching TikTok or when we're watching YouTube or whatnot. And so I think that's definitely a downfall of social media is that it's a faster, easier way. It's a direct, faster, easier way for media to manipulate messages, to send messages to you, to abuse you, and to remind you that you need to spend as much money as possible because there are so many things that are wrong with you that you need to fix, including the fact that you don't even have the right phone to look at the TikTok videos with. You need to upgrade your phone. You need to make sure you have a better camera lens because your photos are not coming in right when you live stream, because your screen is not clear when you're live streaming and whatnot. And I want to emphasize a lot of folks are really in difficult places in terms of not receiving the support that they need. And so they may have some mental health issues of some type. The system does not care about personal problems that people have. But I would say another bad thing about social media, unfortunately, is people feel like that's the only avenue they have where they can air their laundry because they don't feel like they can trust people, or maybe they appreciate the attention that it brings and they like being able to air their laundry. Either way, that is not a good thing. And that's how social media can be weaponized, because now you have celebrities and everyday people who are using social media to narrate their lives. And now we're at a point where you have people who don't care at all. And capitalism is saying, yes, yes, do more of that. Narrate more of your life, put more videos out there. Let us know what's in your refrigerator. Tell us where you're going on your next vacation. Keep us in your life as much as possible, because you are keeping the money in our pockets. You are allowing the advertisers to keep giving us money so they can keep airing their commercials. So they also appreciate you doing that, because every time your video goes to a break, that commercial comes on and we get paid what we need to get paid. They would not be in business without you all airing that laundry. Not to say, not needless to say, then you have people who are messaging you who have no intention of helping. They just want to make fun of you and hurt you more because they know that you're already in a low place. And so just thinking about that on a very humanistic level, that's a difficult thing. And then, we can also mention how there are so many people who they've already had issues talking about things that engage struggle. So, there was always this rule where, if you were having dinner conversations with people, you shouldn't talk about politics, you shouldn't talk about race, you shouldn't talk about things that are shifty and might shift the conversation or rock the boat or whatever that may be. But I would argue that was before the quarantine and the lockdown. Now we see that even more so playing out. And I think a lot of it is because people are lost and they are not in organizations that are working for justice. A, B, where their source of information is coming from is not credible, and it's not reliable, and it's not valid. So they're getting information from a false place. They're not in the organization that's working for justice, which means they could tune out the BS information and actually get legitimate information if they were in an organization that was working for justice. And so then they find themselves spewing out this BS rhetoric, because what else are you going to do but take in the information that's wrong and then do what? Turn around and give it right back, right? Because that's what, I guess that's what makes people feel intelligent, or that's what makes people feel useful, or whatever the reason is that they're doing that. Meanwhile, they may or may not know that the information they're spewing out is completely false. It is completely false. And so we have to think about that. We think about how there's some people spewing out information because they want to put out bad information. Maybe they're agents of capitalism and they get paid to put out bad information. Maybe there are some people that put out bad information and they have no idea that it's bad because they are literally so ignorant. They don't even know how to do their own research. They don't even know how to read. They don't know how to read. They don't know how to sound out letters. They don't know how to formulate words, and they don't know how to identify what vowels and consonants are, because the education system, at least in America, is a joke. So we have all these different reasons as to why people don't know how to engage in struggled conflict conversations. And so because of that, they don't know how to do it in person. They don't know how to do it on social media either, but they especially don't know how to do it in person. And also let's talk about the fact that who would have even taught them how to do that, right? Who would have taught them how to do that? If they were in an organization that was working for justice, well, those skills could start to be manicured and manipulated. But if they're not even in an organization working for justice, they're certainly not going to have learned that skill in the education system, especially if they were educated in America. They're not going to learn that. So then where does that skill develop? Where's the opportunity for that skill to develop? Which means it gets undeveloped. And that muscle for your brain never gets built. So if they don't have the ability to struggle, and they don't know how to struggle, and they don't know how to approach struggling in person, then what are they going to do? Go to social media, because it's so much easier to state your opinions behind a screen and really behind an avatar. So people may not even know what you really look like. You might not even have your actual name as the profile. It's very cowardly. Okay. So we have all these different things where you're not even appearing to be your true self. You're not even appearing to be your true self with your opinion, but you're sharing your opinion so that everybody needs to know about it. And a lot of times your opinion is hurtful. It's rooted in meanness. It's rooted in negativity. It's rooted in hateration. It's rooted in all these things. And yet you don't even know what you're talking about. So you don't want to approach the struggle from an in-person standpoint. It's easier to post it on social media. And that is socially accepted, you all, which we do have to take responsibility for. That is socially accepted. We as a society, we accept people to post on social media, and we accept them to do that, and we allow them to do it, and we applaud them when they do it. Because some of us really enjoy watching other people be miserable. I mean, you all, that's messed up. We really got to think about that. That is so messed up. And also, it's a waste of time. It is such a waste of time because we're never going to get free if you're sitting there laughing at somebody else because they've announced that they're depressed. That is not going to help our cause. You know why? Because when Africa becomes free and when we achieve one unified socialist Africa, and when we get those colonizers out of our space, there's still going to be depressive people. Even when we achieve all those things, depression is not going to magically go away. That's always going to be something we're going to have to deal with. It was there before Africa was colonized. It's there while Africa is being colonized. It's a disease that will be there afterwards, and we're going to have to deal with that. We can't just kick out all the people who are depressed. We talk about that all the time. We can't just kick out the people who are sex workers. We're still going to have to figure out how to navigate that once we achieve socialism. We're still going to have to work out how to deal with the people who are abusers. Now, we might decide to kick them out, but if they decide to change their ways because we approach them and tell them they have no other alternative, then we need to learn how to coexist with them. So people who express depression on social media, we don't laugh at them and point and say, ha, ha, he. We need to figure out a way to deal with that, because they're still going to be impacted by that once Africa achieves its one unified socialist Africa. And we're still going to have to think about that. And I know a lot of you haven't really processed that that's going to happen, but it is. My dad just said people are really peed off all around the world. They are peed off. And I'm so excited. I'm so excited because it's about time. It's about time. This system is a joke and it's trash. And we should have done something about it a long time ago, but at least people are peed off now and they're not taking it sitting down. So let's continue to celebrate that, which means we don't encourage the system to make fun of people and we don't participate in making fun of people. I also think it's important to note, and I'll move to the next slide, that it's so much easier to post something than to actually just deal with it. And so I would argue there's this piece about, because you don't have the skills to properly deal with struggle, right? Because so many people are quote unquote uncomfortable when they have to engage in difficult conversations, which of course we understand. Just because we're organizers doesn't mean we don't understand decent, not even decent, but just basic humanistic qualities. We still understand that. I struggle with having conflicting conversations all the time. I don't enjoy having conversations with my students where I tell them that they should not celebrate on Thanksgiving. I enjoy telling them that I don't celebrate it, but I don't really think it's fair for me to tell them what they need to do. I think I should give them the tools and then allow them to do their own research and hope that they can come back and ask questions at that point. But then you start getting into all these other things where people start to shut down if they feel like they're not in control and if they feel like they don't know how to deal with the tension. And so I try my hardest to just say, you know, this is my ideology, this is my philosophy, this is what I do, and this is why I do it. And then from there, usually people will be interested and want to know more. But I can't go around saying you need to do this and you need to do that, because again, people don't have the proper tools and they don't know how to deal with that, and they don't take criticism well because they're also not in organizations working for justice. If they were in organizations working for justice, and if those organizations had a healthy foundation in terms of how we approach criticism, like we do in the All African People's Revolutionary Party, then at the end of each meeting, when we approach positive criticism, self-criticism, that's an area where we can air out our laundry, but also acknowledge some practical, strategic ways to fix whatever the challenges are that we found we were faced with for that meeting. We are not perfect by any means. I had a work study meeting yesterday, and there were several tasks that I did not complete before the meeting. And I gave immediate self-criticisms to myself because I should have done better. And I told my comrades some of the steps I was going to take to do better for the next meeting. But then we actually execute those steps. We don't just keep saying self-criticism. We actually have to fix it. And a lot of us don't even know that we need to admit that we need to fix it. So if we don't admit that we need to fix it, then how are we going to fix it? Because we don't even acknowledge that it's a problem. That's a problem. To not acknowledge that it's a problem, that's a serious problem. So yes, I can give more examples, but I'm going to move on to the next slide and just say, we also can continue to think about how, you know, there are so many challenges that we are faced with in this society, you all. Social media also influences how our children are writing. how they're thinking about writing, how they're thinking about reading. And so for me as an instructor, when they're turning their assignments into me, I'm literally seeing that they are sending me papers because they have written in shorthand, as you would if you were sending a text message. And so again, like these are just some of the downfalls, I would say, of social media, because we're not even in a position where we can help our children understand these are some different ways to go about communicating a message. If this were the case for that, you'd be able to do that. But in this case, because this is a college level paper, we're trying to do this and da, 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 and it just becomes a challenge for people. And again, being able to help them understand how to separate from that. You know, we don't really have any positives that come from allowing social media to influence us. If we don't know how to think for ourselves, if we don't know how to make our own decisions, if we don't know how to live our lives without watching other people on social media and listening to their choices and how they make their decisions and then making our decisions off of their decisions, that means we're never going to be able to think critically. And it means we're never going to be able to think independently. And ultimately, independence is what we need, not individuality, but independence. Because the people on social media are not in organizations that are working for justice. You know how I know? I don't know Kim Kardashian personally, but I know she's not in an organization working for justice. You know how I know? I know because if she was, she wouldn't be on social media doing the things that she's doing. Because a true organizer would not use a capitalist platform and celebrate capitalism and promote capitalism, parading around in her skinwear and all the other stuff that she sells, whatever other stuff she's selling. They wouldn't be doing that if they were a true organizer. Now, you have some people that use the term organizer, but they're really not. But if they're true organizers, then they understand that this system is designed to make people feel crappy about themselves because they need to buy more things to make themselves look better, feel better, and in essence, be better human beings. So if Kim Kardashian is trying to sell you her skin suits, then that tells me that she's not interested in joining an organization that's working for justice. She's probably not even interested in changing the conditions for capitalism, because that means that's going to affect her paycheck. And she's got to make sure that she continues to make money so she can keep making swimsuits and keep selling skin suits and keep doing all the BS that she's already doing. Meanwhile, she's not advancing the world at all. She's not helping to change hunger or poverty. She's not helping to change gender-based violence. She's not helping to change polygamy. She's not helping to change policies that are being acted right now that are homophobic and rooted in misogyny and patriarchy. She's not doing anything like that. She could care less about that. So why are we investing our time in her? And I say we because I'm a collective humanist, but I personally am not on social media because there's so much BS out there. And I don't have time to get caught up in it, because you will get caught up. You all know what I'm talking about. So as I prepare to close and pass the space back to my dad, I just want to say, you all, we're not going to advance and become a free, one unified socialist Africa if we keep letting social media influence our thoughts. That is never going to happen. That is never going to happen. And you can take any person that we have already idolized. You can take Marcus Garvey, Kwame Ture, Kwame Nkrumah. You can take Shirley Graham Du Bois. You can take Assata Shakur. You can take Theodore Gomes. You can take any person that we have talked about on this seminar, Marilyn Buck. You can take any person that we have talked about and tell me how they may have used social media, especially if they passed before that time, but tell me how they would have used social media to advance the struggle. And 9 times out of 10, they would have understood that this was never going to be a guaranteed thing, because they knew how the system worked. And they may have used media like newspapers, sure, to get their message across, but I guarantee you they wouldn't have been parading around like the Kim Kardashians or like the Blue Ivies and the Beyoncés. They wouldn't have been doing that. They wouldn't have been doing that. There's just no way, because they knew that that would have gotten in the way of the true passion, which is dismantling capitalism altogether, which means not using social media in that way. Now, if we use social media like AAPRP is doing, that's a different story. But doing that, you don't have as many followers because that's not as attractive. So we have to change the ideology. We have to change why it's not attractive, and we have to make it be attractive, which means we have to help people understand that this right here, this Kim Kardashian slide we see, this is not advancing the struggles for people anywhere. It is temporarily making your life better once you get your skin suit in the mail. But after that, you're still going to realize that you might be one paycheck away from paying your rent on time. And when the system kicks you out and puts you on the street, then what are you going to do? So we still need a better system, you all, because no one should be kicked out. We should deal with the shelterless population that we have currently. We shouldn't add to it and make more people live on the streets. So just understand that, you all. Social media can be used to develop organizations that are working for justice. Absolutely. But we need to keep in mind who is fueling these social media platforms. And if they have capitalism written on their forehead, then we need to understand how to still take their resources and still build movements that can help change conditions for poor people, for colonized people, for people who are in organizations working for justice, but they need more support and they need to raise more political education for those around them so that we can all start to join an organization that's working for justice. Or as we've said in the last 2 weeks, if you're not interested in joining an organization working for justice, then you need to support an organization that's working for justice. Maybe that's physically by donating water or monetarily, whatever that looks like. But it's going to take all of us. Ashe.
Ashe, I think, Shakura, you did a very good job of laying out what social media is and the impacts it's had, positive and negative, on society, not just here in the United Snakes, but internationally. So I think for my portion, that sets it up nicely. And I can go into talking about specifically breaking down what we're talking about when we say social media influencers and the counterinsurgency, which is the topic for today. And I'll just start by defining what we mean when we say social media influencers. Of course, 2 weeks ago, we did the workshop on celebrities, bourgeois celebrities, and the adverse impact they have on our movement for liberation and justice. We talked about how celebrities, because their primary objective is making money, and they're not involved in our struggle for justice, meaning they're not involved in organizations fighting for our people and fighting for justice, then they cannot be trusted to provide direction for our people. And social media influencers, that's really an extension of that, because with the, as Shakur mentioned, with the proliferation of social media platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all of them, right? What that's done is it's allowed everyday people who are not celebrities, who don't have record contracts and are not producing music that's sold on a mass level, who aren't making movies that are presented on a mass level, aren't on television that's presented on a mass level. What social media has done is it's allowed everyday people to use these platforms I just mentioned and to create content that allows them to go viral, as they say, where hundreds of thousands or millions of people even watch what they have to say. So it's created instant celebrities, if you will, with these people, because a lot of these folks develop all of these followers, and they actually have become people who people look to provide an analysis. And if you think about it, that is incredibly insane, because nowhere in this process do any of these people have to demonstrate any qualifications to speak on the topics that they're speaking on. And no one is even asking for any type of analytical analysis to come out of what they're saying. It's just all based on, as Kwame Ture said, people in capitalism react to stimuli. And that's what social media influencers rely on, is people seeing and hearing what they say and reacting to how that makes them feel. And the problem with that is that there's no analytics behind it, there's no analysis behind it. And so something might sound good on the surface, but if you dig deeper, there's always a lot more to it. And that's the problem. And that's what we're going to try to speak to in the few remaining minutes that we have. And we're going to talk about it in the context of the capitalist system, a system that's organized around private profit, organized around the production apparatus being used for private profit, because that's what capitalism is, and liberalism, which is the concept of avoiding confrontation, avoiding things that need to be addressed because we don't want to be uncomfortable. We don't want to have people get upset with us. We rather just let things that are negative happening around us just happen, because we don't want to be in the position to have people's wrath aimed at us for calling out the problem and raising it in a way so that it has to be addressed. So we're going to talk about capitalism and liberalism. And the way that I want to bring that up is to say that, capitalism has done an outstanding job of promoting this concept of individualism, where everybody sees things only from an individualist perspective. People see the entire world from an individualist perspective, and people's evidence of what happens in the world, because they have this individualist perspective, is shaped not by analytical study, but by anecdotal evidence. In other words, if someone says, well, there's no racism in the world today, then people don't have the ability and the skill to say, well, let's analyze what the definition of racism is. How does it function? How does it impact people? So that we can begin to show, like, what are the trends from a scientific standpoint? In other words, if we do an experiment and we have people engaging in various activities, what are the results of them engaging in that activities, and what are the results consistently trending towards? In other words, example of what I'm saying is, if you take African people or indigenous people and you give them a resume that has qualifications, and you take 600 African people and you take another 600 indigenous people, and then you take another 600 European people, and they give all of those people, that's 1,800 people, the same resume. You just change the names, but they have the same resume, same education, same schooling, same job experience. And you send them out to the same places to apply for jobs. The results you will get is the overwhelming majority of Europeans who apply will get callbacks and interviews and will get offered jobs. Whereas very disproportionately, those Black and brown people won't get that. That's what we mean, you all, when we say analytical study and analysis. That's science. That's experimentation based on consistent variables that give us consistent results. That's science, that's study. But we don't have that. Instead, what we have is anecdotal, emotionalist, individualist evidence. So is there racism in society? Instead of the experimentation that I just described, what we have is, well, no, because this Black person the other day, they called me a honky. So that means that that person committed racism against me. And on the surface, for people who don't know how to think critically, oh, well, yeah, they did call them a name based on race. So that means that, racism, anybody can be a racist because you're simple-minded. That's how you see it. When in reality, again, if we dig deeper than that, we know that there's a lot more to it, that you can't even tell us what the origin of the word honky is. I can tell you that Africans on the slave plantations, when they used to call us to perform work, they would blow on horns. And so our people called them honkies for doing that. That is in no way a derogatory term that is based in the exploitative history against any Europeans anywhere on earth. So to take that term and equate it to like the N-word or the S-word for indigenous people, or any of these other terms that are rooted in the systemic exploitation of those communities, anybody that says that's the same thing is just an idiot. But this is what we have to get to, and this is what we're talking about. So since we have this individualist ideology, people don't know how to do that. We don't have a collective analysis. We don't even know how to do that. And so this individualism has taken the place of collective ideological struggle. We don't have collective ideological struggle. We don't have people challenging people over backward ideas. You people sit around here is so liberal. And again, I told you the definition of liberalism is avoiding confrontation with this backward, cowardly nonsense. Like, well, I don't talk about politics and religion. Those are the two things we should talk about all the damn time. Those are the two things we should talk about all the damn time. because nothing in this society is not political. Everything is political. So if you're telling me you don't talk politics, you're telling me you don't talk about a damn thing. So that's why that's an example of what we mean when we say liberalism, and how we have to get it out of the way and create more collective environment where we can have struggle over ideas, and that's acceptable. It's never acceptable to attack an individual, but it's always acceptable to attack an individual's backward ideas. So that's the basis under which we're talking about this social media phenomenon, and the dominance of liberalism over ideological struggle has created this environment where anybody can say anything all the time, and they don't have to worry about any kind of consequences, right? And again, a lot of this, as we talked about during the celebrity broadcast a couple of weeks ago, a lot of this is based in the fact that none of these people are in organizations. Like Shakur said, none of the celebrities, none of the social media influencers, none of these people are in organizations. So that is a serious problem. Now, if you're talking about, well, I'm going to show you how to wear these clothes. Okay, that's fine. I don't give a damn. I won't watch that. But if people that want to watch that want to watch it, that's great. But I'm talking about people who are talking about our struggle as African people for liberation, not being in organizations. Those people, that's problematic. And any of you out there that always want to express your opinions about what's happening with our people and you're not in organizations, that is a problem. Well, I have a right to my opinion. No, you don't have a right to your opinion. If you're not engaged in the work that gives you the right to have an opinion, you don't have it. If you have not born children, you don't have a right to have an opinion about what it takes to bear children. If you haven't raised children, you can express your opinions, but they're going to have limited value. If you've never read a book about anything, you can express your opinions about that, but they're going to have limited value. If you've never prepared a meal, you can express your opinions about that, but who the hell cares what you think? Nobody's going to eat your worthless cooking because you don't know what the hell you're talking about. So you have to have experience. And when it comes to our people's struggle for justice and liberation, there's only one way that experience manifests itself. And that means that you're working with others to build capacity for us to be able to fight back against the forces that oppress us. And that, you all, means organization. So if you're anti-organization, you have nothing to say, at least that I want to listen to, about what our people need to be able to do. And these people are never in organizations. These social media people are never in organizations. And the problem with that is no organization, no accountability. You're just accountable to yourself as an individual. So you can say and do whatever the hell you want to do. And that's what these people are doing. Now, I can't do that because I have an organization. I'm accountable to the organization. If I got on here today and I said, actually, I don't think capitalism is really a bad thing, I would have comrades all over the world coming here telling me, this program needs to stop. And you need to take down the party logo. This is against the line of I'm accountable to that. And I hold people accountable to that because these are our principles. But if you're only just one individual and nobody's doing that to you, you can do and say whatever you want to do. And that's what these people are doing. And that's what we want to talk about. So when we say, when we talk about the system feeding on social media's liberalism, what we're talking about is what goes viral on social media. It's not an accident. Like, it's not like you just fixed your hair the right way. You spoke in the right accent, and so you got 1 million views. That's not what happens. There are formulas to this. There are algorithms to this. And one of the examples of that is that these social media platforms like YouTube, for example, they pick up shorts, and shorts are videos that people make no more than 60 seconds talking about whatever your topic is. And what YouTube does is they search for shorts that people make. Anybody can make a short. You can go on YouTube right now and make a short. And social media, if they pick it up, they'll start putting it in feeds everywhere on YouTube. They'll start putting it in feeds on Facebook. They'll start putting it in feeds on Instagram. They'll start putting it out there so people can see it. So that's how people go viral. And that's based on the direction of the capitalist platform. That's not based on how much quality is in your content. That's not what decides that. What decides that is what the platform wants people to see. So, I've done a short for Our Ancestors Voices, but I don't have any illusions that it's going to be promoted by YouTube. I'm just hopeful that somebody can see it. So this is the reality. That's why anybody that's on here really trying to say something worthwhile, you have an uphill battle with being able to get people to hear your message. So this is, one of the institutional shortcomings of these platforms. And then reactionaries who are engaged in this individualistic clout chasing, because that's what it's about. That's what these social media influencers are really concerned about, is advancing their own individual profile, because they can make money if they get enough views. That can be a payoff for them. So that's really what they're trying to do. And they don't have any accountability to any forms of justice. So they can just say whatever the hell they want to say to make money, just like the celebrities that we talked about 2 weeks ago. So this is important to understand. And then they don't have to worry about you all keeping them accountable, because they can just say things like, well, that makes sense because of this. And you're like, oh yeah, it makes sense. And no, it doesn't make any damn sense. So this is the problem that we have to understand, is because this reality has created a situation where any sorry so-called analysis can be presented as, oh, this is really educational. This is really something that needs to be said. Oh, they said something there. And I'll give you some examples of what I'm talking about. Like some of these people that were social media influencers. Candace Owens is in the picture. I mean, she's a piece of trash. If you look at her, if you listen to what she's talking about, and I've watched her videos so I could say this person is an absolute piece of dog manure. What they're talking about makes absolutely no damn sense. If I was on a stage with her, I would eat this clown alive in 20 seconds. And you could too, because she's not even talking about anything. Her strategy is to talk, and she doesn't even let the other person talk, because that way she can keep you from denouncing the craziness that she's talking about. That wouldn't work with me. So I'm saying that this is what these people do, is just get on here and say all this nonsense. Like she has all these videos I watched of her, and she's talking about showing these videos of Africans in Target, taking stuff out of Target or Apple, and like, you look at that, you don't have any political education. Your family doesn't have any political education. Your friends don't have any. So you'll see that and you'll be like, oh, wow, they're stealing from Apple store. That's terrible. That's criminality. And that's what she's talking about. And this passes as a deep analysis. That's not a deep analysis. A deep analysis is that Apple is in the Congo right now, profiting off of our children being exploited, digging in those damn mines so that they can get that coltan, steal it, and power the internet for it. So I don't give a damn if our people should go in every goddamn Apple store all over the world and take every goddamn thing out of there. The only problem I have with it is that what they take should come to the movement for liberation, so we can run those damn criminals out of the Congo and take Candace Owens' ass with them and build a united socialist Africa. That's the only problem I have with the people running into Apple stores. I don't give a damn about them going and taking those damn phones out. I wish they would take all of that stuff out of there and take it. So that's a deep analysis, you all. But we don't talk like that because we don't have access to do that. And these type of clowns get all the access to say all this nonsense on there. And this is why there's so much confusion. That's why these people are so dangerous. And that's why we say it's a part of the counterinsurgency, because whether they mean to do it or not, because they're just clout chasing, trying to get money, what they're doing is serving the interests of our enemies against us. And that makes them enemies of our people. And that's all of them on there. That Kevin Samuels guy, I know he died. I don't give a damn. You know, he's on there spreading all this nasty confusion. anti-women propaganda. I know a lot of you are like, oh, he's saying some deep things. Well, that's because, you know, there's a saying, is what he's saying deep or are you just shallow? I'm saying you're shallow if you think he's deep. That's because you're shallow. That clown wasn't saying nothing. And I don't believe this because I'm not afraid of death, like a lot of you all. If somebody who was living and no longer living was engaging in work that was detrimental to our people, I'm gonna speak against them. I don't give a damn if they're dead or not. You know, George Washington is dead. I'm gonna speak against his ass, as I should. So this is what we're talking about when we say all these coons and Negroes seeking fame within the capitalist system and using social media to chase clout at the expense of our people. It's disgraceful that a man is sitting up there. You got women calling in and, they're dumber than he is. Nobody that's calling in there is qualified to really say anything to him in those videos that could clarify that he really isn't saying a damn thing worth listening to, because nobody who is qualified to do that would have time to do that. You're engaged in much more important work than calling in. Why would I call and talk to a fool on his platform? I got better things to do. But if I did do that, in a couple of seconds, I could dissect the nonsense of what he's talking about in his patriarchal rants. Feminism is not, you don't even know, y'all know you don't even know what feminism is. Feminism has not posed a single problem in my life. And it really hasn't posed a single problem in your life. Women standing up and asserting their right to be respected as human beings to reach their full potentials has not posed a single problem with anyone's life. But you have to understand what feminism is. You can't confuse feminism with bourgeois European woman feminism. You got to understand class struggle. That's that deep analysis that I'm talking about, that we don't engage in, and that these coons don't engage in when they're talking on here. Look at the one, she looked like a coon in the picture. These people reach wide audiences because most of us are so easily confused and manipulated. If we don't have the tools to hold them accountable, we're sitting up there, oh yeah, they right. Candace Owens is right. No, she's an idiot and you're a double idiot. And neither one of you have the tools of analysis. This woman won't come. I mean, she was on a platform with T.I. And T.I. will never be, I don't have anything against T.I., but I'm saying T.I. will never be confused with Malcolm X or Kwame Ture or anybody that has a history of struggle for our people's liberation. And he ate her up on there just because she was not in the typical environments that she was in when she was with Counterpoint and all these reactionary white supremacist organizations that this clown woman worked for. When she was this was an African platform where she couldn't just talk over everyone the way she always does, and she got her behind handed to her. So this is what I'm saying. The moment this fool was in a situation where she has some level of accountability, she couldn't do anything. But most of the time she sets herself up so that she doesn't have to have that level of accountability. And we have to be smart enough to recognize that. And then here's another coon and buffoon, this Jason Whitlock coon. This fool sits there. I'm convinced that he sits there on sports TV shows, and at night he sits there and thinks, what can I say to make the master happy? And then he gets on social media and says it because he's trying to build his ability to have a reputation. And he'll say all these incredibly stupid things, all these incredibly stupid things. And there's no one that counters or questions any of it. And that's how this system works for these people. So, much of this is carefully crafted and implemented by the capitalist system against us on a systemic level. And that's important to understand. And that's what we mean when we talk about counterinsurgency. A lot of this is not just these individuals doing this, you all. A lot of this, like you heard during these bourgeois elections, they talked about how Russia had manipulated a lot of these platforms to advance a lot of this white supremacist propaganda to sway the election. Well, that's real. They talk about TikTok, China, which was one of the creators of TikTok, doing the same thing. That's real. But I can guarantee you, Russia and China combined don't have the capacity and the apparatus to manipulate social media like the United Snakes of America does. And I'm telling you right now that the United Snakes of America and its intelligence apparatuses, the Central Intelligence Agency, Criminals in Action, CIA, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Interpol, all of these reactionary capitalist intelligence, M16 in Britain, France's intelligence, the Mossad from Zionist Israel, all of these reactionary terrorist intelligence organizations are manipulating social media. So what I'm saying is that, yes, there is a campaign where these Negro coons, like the one you're looking at on this screen right now, are given the apparatus to present these messages, and they're influencing the platforms to advance these on a mass level so that these messages can get out. These messages that say things like, we are not oppressed as people, we are individuals, and if you have a problem, it's because you haven't tried hard enough as an individual. There is no such thing as collective oppression. There is no such thing as a system of oppression. None of that exists anymore. It never did exist, really. And right now we need to be talking about how you can work harder to become better Americans or better British or better Canadians or better slaves so that you can better serve the capitalist system. This is an organized, systemic thing, and these coons, these funny looking coons like this one right here, are being used to advance those messages. And I don't give a damn if you're look shaming him. Me look shaming him is better than me seeing him in person, because if I saw him in person, I would be in prison. So it's better that I release steam this way and do it this way and just talk about this coon being a coon and being used by the capitalist system to advance messages that continue to oppress and exploit our people, because that's exactly what it is. And that's what we mean when we talk about counterinsurgency. There are some Africans and other peace-loving people who are striking back against this. That has to be said. They're striking back against this. You see a lot of these positive videos. There are people in the Asian community who are talking about anti-African racism in the Asian community. And there are Africans who are on there trying to strike back against these kind of clowns. And that's a good thing, but they need our help, you all. And so we have to make a clarion call for principled ideological struggle. These people can't be striking back just as individuals. We have to have a push for organized effort to combat this nonsense. And that means creating a situation where we have a organizational clarion call. We call for people to join organizations on an international level. We don't care what organizations, join organizations, and that we have principled ideological struggle as a critical component of these organizations. And when we do that, that'll create conditions where these kind of coons will be accountable to us, and they won't be able to get up here and talk all this nonsense about our people and our struggle, disrespecting us so that they can make a few dollars. So we thank you for joining us. We invite you to come back next week on Sunday, August 13th. We're going to be talking about the Liberation Act of breastfeeding. Breastfeeding is a contribution to our liberation struggle. And if we can get consciousness around it to the point where it's seen as a necessary element of our lives, that will be a positive manifestation for our children and our families. So we want to invite you back next week when we talk about that. Go to the AAPRP Forward Ever shop and buy something, support the African Revolution, join the All African People's Revolutionary Party, go to aaprp-intl.org and go to abetterworld.me. These videos will be up and you can get all of them there and support Hood Communist. It's an outstanding site for revolutionary African literature. We want to invite you to do that. We have so many programs. I saw where the Pantula podcast just commemorated over 100 episodes in that podcast. And that's AAPRP comrades who are doing that one and all the other ones you see there. So we are trying our absolute best. We are not going to be promoted by YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and CIA and none of that. The only way we can get the word out about this work we're doing is through you. If you don't tell people, they won't know. So we ask you to let people know about all of these programs. And we ask you to let them know about my book, A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence. We are still committed to organizing apparatus here in the United States of America that can support our struggle for African liberation at home in Africa. I mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast that Africa is on fire, and we have to prepare those of us that live here in the belly of the backward empire of the United States, how we can position ourselves to play a role in our struggle for African liberation, and also serve to support our allies, our indigenous people, and other people struggling for justice. And that's what the book is about. So please spread the word. Help us combat this social media phenomenon is being used against our people as a part of the insurgency against our liberation. Help us do that, you all. Make a commitment today to tell somebody to join an organization. And of course, you got to be in one to tell somebody else to do it. Make a commitment to do that. That's what we need. And when we start to do that, that's when we'll begin to see ourselves make the kind of progress we make. Even if 10% more of us were in organizations, we will begin to see the difference. So forward ever, backwards never. We appreciate you joining us. We hope to see you back. Support all of the programs. Have a great rest of your Sunday evening.